Okay, welcome to our 5x5 podcast here at LeagueMed. My name is Kate Morgan, and I'm a member of the LeagueMed team. And I'm thrilled to be here today with the founder and CEO of Anodyne Nanotechnology. Anodyne Nanotech will be on our platform coming soon, so you can access materials and look at it as a potential investment. First, a little bit about LeagueMed. LeagueMed's mission is to accelerate the pace of medical innovation by bringing together two really important communities who need each other: the medical community, doctors, nurse practitioners, and other interested parties, to be individual investors in companies seeking funding. Not startup companies, but those that have done some innovation work, done some proof work, and kind of looking for either a Series A or the next round of funding. Our platform is free to join. Please check it out at LeagueMed.com. You do have to be an accredited investor to make an investment, but you can invest directly on the platform for minimums sometimes as low as $5,000. The hub also has dynamic information on medical innovation. It offers continuing education and also other member benefits. Please take a look. And now a little bit about our 5x5 podcast. 5x5 is a term used for radio transmission to indicate that it's 5 loud and 5 clear, very loud and very clear. And this podcast is to bring clarity and distribution to innovators, founders, CEOs of innovative companies, and educators and investors in alternative assets. We hope that you enjoy this series. Come back and look for more. And now we'll dive in and learn a little bit about Jake, his journey to entrepreneurship, the breakthrough of his innovation, his team's innovation, as well as what his future roadmap looks like. What I wanted to do first is read, if you don't mind, Jake, read your vision and mission, because I think it gives a really clear idea of what Anodyne Nanotech is about. At Anodyne Nanotech, we believe that breakthrough medicines require unique delivery systems to reach their full potential and provide the desired clinical outcomes. For hundreds of years, needles and syringes have been used to deliver medicine, and innovation is long overdue. The HeroPatch is the first platform capable of efficiently delivering clinically meaningful doses of medicine in a tunable system to provide a better and more convenient alternative to cumbersome injections. Together, we will redefine drug delivery. So I love that. I think it's so clear what the need is and what the innovation is that you have with our HeroPatch. But before we go into details on the HeroPatch, I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your path to entrepreneurship. It's not clear for everybody when they're 12 that they're going to start a company. And for some people, it is clear. But I'd love to hear what brought you to this stage where you have this fantastic company that you're growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kate, and thanks for having me on the podcast and the opportunity to tell our story. In terms of entrepreneurship, it wasn't one of those cases where I woke up one morning when I was 6 years old and knew I wanted to be a doctor, or knew I wanted to be a lawyer, or knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But as you and I have had conversations in the past, in hindsight, it seems much more clear. Growing up, I was always very interested in math and science. Those areas kind of came naturally to me. That led me towards engineering, and I ended up getting my undergraduate degree at Union College in biomedical engineering. But prior to that, there were definitely hints of entrepreneurship in middle school. I used to sell gum and candy in the hallways, and then moving on into high school, I actually used to purchase wholesale jerseys and sell them to some of my friends until I did get a cease and desist letter from the NBA. So
I love that story. It's great.
That shut down.
He must have been successful
operation.
enough. The NBA is like, oh, he's really coming after our bacon. We have to shut him down.
Yeah, I'm not sure I was impacting their bottom line, but nonetheless, I stopped that. And my mother was definitely happy to see now I'm into a very transparent, very regulated industry now for my entrepreneurship.
So what was it about drug delivery, or what was it about this in particular that made you think, I want to start a company around this? And as we know from many of the CEOs we talk to, as well as everything we know about entrepreneurship, it's always harder than you think it is going to be at the outset. There are more hurdles to overcome. There are more things to jump through and things that come up that you don't expect. But what led you on this journey? What made you think, I want to solve this problem?
Yeah, well, I guess two pieces. First, so I met my co-founders at Tufts University. There I was doing a program of innovation and management, which is somewhat like an MBA, but a little bit more focused on translating technology and really creating innovation in the space. And through that process, we met one of my founders, Hojat, who was doing postdoc research there and invented the microneedle technology that is the basis of Anodyne and the HeroPatch. And when I saw that, I thought, and the read that you mentioned in the beginning of how we've delivered medicine the same way for so long, and now with chronic diseases really exploding in prevalence, there's a high need for being able to deliver therapies in innovative ways, and not just for the sake of being innovative, but to really impact the clinical outcome and have better outcomes with existing therapies. So that was the initial, basis of founding Anodyne.
That's really interesting. I remember from a previous conversation that you also were fascinated and disappointed to read how many patents are left unexecuted. And I think you knew a nephrologist who had like 20 patents, but nothing had been done by it. So there seems to be a real gap in execution on innovation, even if the innovation is partially there already. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So that was part of my motivation for going to that Tufts program in general. And really, the example that you cited there, an excellent nephrologist, really intelligent guy, expert in his field, but had all of these patents that were not being used. And the most recent one he had essentially added 5 cents to the system that he was trying to improve. And so that's what really made me understand that you can be an incredible engineer, but if you don't understand all of the needs of all of the stakeholders in the value chain, there's a very strong chance that whatever you're working on is not going to get to market. And so that's where I'm really excited about what we're working on at Anodyne, because it's not just impacting the lives of the patients and improving that in terms of the quality of care or the end product, but it also creates value along the rest of the value chain so that it's more easily adopted by pharmaceutical partners, by manufacturers and distributors.
That's fantastic. We'll hear a little bit more about that, but I think that's a really interesting way of framing the ability to create a drug delivery system that takes cost and pain out of the entire system. But we'll get more to that later.
Absolutely.
So you're launched, you're an entrepreneur, and now we want to hear a little bit about what your breakthrough is. What is the science that makes Anodyne Nanotech so special?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think it's worthwhile just briefly framing the industry. We've seen that medicine is moving a lot towards large molecules, peptides, monoclonal antibodies, because they're more specific in the body than small molecules of the past. We see a lot of the new medicines moving in this direction, and they're almost all injectable therapies because they're large molecules. For a long time, it's been seen that the transdermal path, so using a patch, would be able to improve that delivery. You have tighter control over the delivery. You wouldn't need cold chain to be able to distribute the products, and overall a better experience for the patient. The problem is that these are large molecules, and using traditional patches like you might see with a nicotine patch or a lidocaine patch doesn't work. The molecules don't go through the skin. So people then move towards a microneedle technology, which has also been around for decades now. People have been trying to get that to work. And it's effective in terms of getting the drug into the skin. However, traditional technologies are very limited on the dose that they can deliver, and there's very complex manufacturing. So our true innovation addresses both of those parts. We work directly with the dry form of the drug, which is the highest concentration. It is also the most stable form. So it improves our manufacturing and the stability of the patch. So by taking those two pieces, we can deliver doses that are relevant for therapeutics in chronic diseases, and the manufacturing is much simpler to be able to hit the scale needed for volumes in chronic disease.
So interesting. And the micro needles, how are they constructed so they can enable the larger molecule peptides to go into the skin and the system in a way that's effective?
Yes. So the general concept of any microneedle is that the stratum corneum, the outermost layer of your skin, is a barrier that's meant to protect you. So other molecules can't just readily get into your body. The microneedles mechanically penetrate that outer layer, but not deep enough to where you're hitting nerve endings or blood vessels. And the drug within the microneedles, in our case, then dissolves out of the microneedles into your body.
Mm-hmm.
The microneedles themselves stay intact. You remove the patch and deliver the therapeutic as if it were an injection, but a much simpler, less painful path.
Obviously, one of the biggest markets right now happened after you started the company. I think you started the company in 2019 before GLP-1s, also, a peptide, were really on the market. And now that has probably had an explosive effect on what your potential is, I would think, in terms of better delivery of a GLP-1. Tell us a little bit about that. And then I'd love to also, kind of as a B of that question, that's not the only peptide drug that could be used for that your technology can be used for. What are the next ones on the map?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right in saying that, we got started before the GLP-1, explosion here, if you will. With that said, this has always been a platform technology with massive opportunities in many different areas, disease states, and treatments for them. What is interesting about this particular case is that it can leverage all of the advantages of our technology in an initial use case, meaning improving the patient experience, reducing the cost, improving the access, of the entire value chain that we talked about, and the last piece of reducing side effects as well. So GLP-1s for obesity and type 2 diabetes serve as a unique opportunity for us. That is one of the main reasons why we're addressing that as with our initial products. And beyond that, there are many other opportunities. So some next on the list that may make sense, especially in the immunology space, things like rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease. We're also looking at fertility medication that require frequent injections, and also in indications for growth hormone deficiencies, so especially in pediatric cases where injections may be particularly cumbersome.
That's a lot. That's exciting. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. I wanted to understand a little bit more about the distribution and the fact that it's dry, so it doesn't need cold chain storage, and what that does in terms of the timing of the ability to use the drug, the cost that it takes to have everything stay cold during its distribution. Talk to us a little bit about that. That seems like a fairly major impact of that innovation.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that piece of it really impacts every stakeholder in the value chain again. At the end patient, there's no need to refrigerate it. And again, we have to go through the FDA and prove out all of these studies. But from what we've seen so far, that is not needed, which makes travel a lot easier. You're not keeping it in your fridge if you have guests coming over, that nature. But when we're getting into the economics of it, the biggest cost drivers are really on the manufacturing and the distribution, as you were pointing out there. So on the manufacturing, liquid handling and the fill finish of vials is a really expensive part of the process, especially when you get into biosimilar manufacturers that are not on the same scale of the Novo Nordisk or the Eli Lillys of the world. And then on the distribution side, there's a lot of pieces. So when you're storing it in a warehouse, patches take up less space on a pallet, so you can pack more in a smaller space. The room temperature versus refrigeration costs less. The actual shipping costs less because now you're not needed in a refrigerated truck. So when you add all of those pieces together, depending on the product, it could be 10 times less on the cost of packaging and distribution versus the existing injectable products.
Wow, that's really significant. Now, I kind of bled into the next topic with that question, but our next topic is what the business opportunity is. After we've kind of talked about the science, we'd like to talk about how big is the market? What's the target addressable market? What does that growth look like? And how are you playing in that market relative to your competitors? So let's start with the first question, which is how big is the target addressable market for your product?
So for the product in general, if you're talking specifically about GLP-1s, I mean, just a few years out, it's projected to be over 100 billion. And that's one peptide. Of course, the largest market of peptides. Peptides in general, that class is in the same time frame over 170 billion as the total opportunity. Of course, we'll be a bit more targeted within that space. As I mentioned, we're starting out with a GLP-1 product. And we will have the ability to expand even further beyond that into monoclonal antibodies and other small molecules opportunities that make sense. The second part of your question, you're asking in terms of how we operate within that. So we have a dual business model approach. On one side, we have our internal development, where we work with molecules that are biosimilar. So the inventing patents have lost their exclusivity, and now biosimilar products can launch. And so we work directly with those molecules to build our own products.
Yep.
The first example of that is the semaglutide patch that we're working on. So instead of an injection, simple patch like this that you would apply. We're entering clinical studies for that this year. A second one that we're working on is to eventually combine with our GLP-1 that promotes muscle mass, so another peptide that we can combine with that, which has been a major side effect for the success of GLP-1s. So that's one side, our internal development. We have a lot of interest from commercial partners in that space to help on the manufacturing and distribution. And then the other piece is looking at the next generation therapies. So working with large pharma innovators that are developing the next generation therapies in the space and partnering with them so that we can build even better products and delivery methods for their improved therapies.
If I also understand it right, the HeroPatch, the way of delivering a drug through the HeroPatch could extend patents of drugs that are already on the market because it's a different way of delivering the medication, giving you another market. Do I have that right?
Yes, so there is a business angle there for sure. So our core, our IP, our platform microneedle technology, it's a new class of microneedles. We just had our patent allowed and published a couple weeks ago. So
congratulations.
Thank you. We're really excited about that. And that is not for a specific patch or product. That is our class of microneedles, essentially. And so from that, we can then branch off with many other additional IP opportunities. So because by changing the route of delivery, it's not just more convenient for the patient, but it can also improve the therapy itself. And there are certain non-obvious parameters around that can create new intellectual property opportunities.
So that's a third market for you, a third potential market for you as well.
Yes, and in another way of saying it is an additional benefit for the markets that we're already pursuing.
Yep. Is there anything else about the business angle that I've missed that you'd like to tell potential investors? And the answer could be no, we've covered it. We covered it pretty well, but I wanted to give you the chance if there's anything I missed.
Um, I'm trying to think. Maybe we can cut that
There
that
you go.
portion.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll
Um,
cut that. Yep. All right. So our next chapter is to talk a little bit about who your current investors are. Obviously, you've been in existence since 2019, and you've made all this progress by having investors who believe in you and have partnered with you. So tell us a little bit about who your current investors are, and then we can get into what you're looking to do with your next round of funding.
Absolutely. Yeah, so our current investors have been excellent, incredibly supportive through our 6+ years of development now. They're a combination of venture capitalists, a few family offices, one in particular that was former founding of a pharmaceutical company, and a couple dozen angel investors from our earlier days, the vast majority of which have very relevant experience in the space, whether it's on the medical device side, the pharmaceutical side, or even more specifically, transdermal drug delivery. So really what we try to do when we find investors are not just investors that are interested in what we're doing and see the vision, but can also provide additional value or network to help us along the journey.
Yep. That's so always important with an investor group that has your best interests at heart from an area of expertise. I think that always works the best. All right, let's talk a little bit about the roadmap. So where are you in terms of clinical trials? When do you expect to finish those? Do you have partners with whom you work with that are important for your success and your pace of success? And then what are you looking to use the current round of funding to do?
Absolutely. So a few questions there. I'll
Yeah.
take one at a time. So the first on kind of where we're at internally in our roadmap. We recently received excellent feedback from the FDA on our pre-IND submission. Essentially,
Congratulations.
thank you. We were really pleased for a few of the items that they confirmed on there and really confirming our roadmap for a phase 1 clinical study and beyond. So now we're internally working on our IND enabling package to be able to initiate our phase 1 clinical study later this year. In terms of your second question on partners, we've had a few collaborations with top 10 pharma in the industry around their proprietary molecules. We're currently in discussions for commercial agreements within that same space. And back on our internal development, as I mentioned earlier, negotiating some commercial agreements for that product specifically.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of what you would use this round of funding to do, where would you deploy the majority of the funds that you're raising?
Yeah, so two primary uses for the funds of this round. One, as I mentioned, the phase 1 clinical study. This will be a huge value creation moment for the company. We've conducted a first-in-human study before using vitamin B12, really just looking at the safety and tolerability of the patch, which in that case was worn for 24 hours with no adverse reactions. So we're really pleased with that. We've had excellent preclinical data with our GLP-1 patch. And so this study really combines the two to demonstrate our unique ability to match injectable therapies with a peptide. So that's the first main bucket. The second is advancing.
And sorry, to go back to that, and what's the timing of that trial in terms of when it starts and when you hope to finalize it?
We'll start it by the end of this year, and it'll take about 3 months to complete, data coming in shortly thereafter. So by Q1, early Q2 of next year, we would have those results.
Oh, that's pretty quick. Okay, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No problem. And then the other piece is just automating our manufacturing to both support that clinical study, but also as we scale up our manufacturing towards phase 3 and commercial launch.
Where is your manufacturing operation?
So as of now, we work with contract manufacturing partners in the area.
Okay, great. Is there anything that is exciting you about your roadmap that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
So everything that I mentioned is already exciting. I mentioned being able to see that we really can match the delivery of injections. That was a huge moment for us in being able to move towards our phase 1 clinical study. I like to envision the someday future as well, and I think that's really exciting because we're starting with peptides, we're starting with matching injectable therapies because we need to demonstrate the capabilities of the technology and gain confidence across the industry because there have been microneedle failures in the past. But what I'm most excited about is a future where imagine an infusion, a therapy that's an infusion. Maybe you need to go into the clinic every month or every 3 months. If instead we can break that therapy down to maybe a weekly patch that you take at home. So now you have much more consistent delivery of that therapy. You remove the need to go into the clinic and would also be able to dramatically reduce the cost there. So that is probably the area that I'm most excited about.
Pretty cool vision. I like that. I appreciate that. Well, Jake, thank you so much for spending time with us. And I encourage everybody who's curious about what Jake is talking about to visit us on LeagueMed.com. Check out all the materials on Anodyne Nanotech. We are so thrilled to have them on our platform and so impressed with what this team has done. And we're looking forward to applauding their success as they go. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you for having me, Kate.